sort of live to tape, although we're not really. We're live to hard drive. We're live to cloud record, whatever we are with our podcast recording stuff here. Welcome back, folks. We're all the way up to episode 8, so we're past the halfway mark of season 13, and we don't have Mike here with us tonight. This is a bit of a shocker. This is only the second episode this season that he's blown us off. Although the first one we just didn't invite him. This time he was actually blowing us off. That said, Bryan is here. Bryan, you're going to usurp his co-host duties. You realize that, right?
God, I hope not.
Well, you're the guy that keeps coming up with all the topics, so that's why we keep bringing you back.
I can't help it. I'm brilliant, but
Well, that, and you're actually putting more effort into this than the rest of us are, so that's kind of cool. We do appreciate you making up for our slackness. So
which isn't much, by the way.
Well, again, we appreciate you making up for our slackness, so thank you. But then also joining us, first time here on Mention and Dispatches, our old buddy Gus is back. Gus, how are you, man?
Can't complain. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, happy you were able to join us. Just out of curiosity, Gus, what have you been playing lately?
Well, it doesn't really fit into anything that we had pre-discussed. Do you still want me to bring it up?
Yeah, that's risk of being, don't worry about it, man.
Chastised and criticized. I played for the last couple of days for about 10 hours. I'm going to assume that both you guys have heard of this game. It just came out of early access, I'd say 6 months ago. It's a player versus player and player versus environment game, so like a survival game, and it's very fitting to the season. It is V Rising. I don't know if you guys have heard of it or played it.
You're a vampire?
Yeah, you're a vampire. You are building your own Fortress of Solitude within a unnamed kingdom, but it's clearly inspired by Romania, Transylvania, Wallachia. And I have to say that I played maybe 5 or 10 hours of it when it was still in early access, and it was good, but you were really left to your own devices. There's no hand holding. There's really not any good form of a guide or anything. And between 6 months ago and now, when it got launched, and now it's at version 1, it's really come a long way. So the last 10 or 12 hours I played with it, it's a ton of fun. And you can play multiplayer where, you could have your friends meet you on your own server, or you can play solo where you have your own isolated server. And either way, it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun in October. There's a lot of, not necessarily gore, but a lot of reference to blood, obviously, but there's so much variety in the environments and the things you can do. You could probably play it for I'd say dozens of hours, and it's really not necessarily spooky, but more interesting. Not necessarily like a kid's game. It really is more aimed, it seems, towards adults, but that's what I've been playing for the last couple of days.
Sounds cool. Again, you're right, seasonally thematic and appropriate there.
I'm nothing if not seasonally thematic.
I've seen some folks chatter about it a little bit online. It's not something that I played with myself, but it does sound kind of cool.
It's definitely interesting. If you don't usually play it, you might get its fangs into you.
It might grab me, huh?
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Are you doing primarily PvP stuff out there, or are you playing against the environment mostly right now?
It's mostly against the environment, which, and I hesitate to say this too, now at my advanced age, I've lost all shame in setting my games to easy or normal if I have to. My first playthrough for this game when it was in early access was normal difficulty. I got my ass kicked over and over and over again, and I got frustrated. I was like, all right, when I go back to it after I get over the ass whooping, I'll just set it to easy. And setting it to easy and then combining that with the features and the tutorials that they added to it, it's a lot more fun now. So I think as I continue to advance in age, I'm just going to give up all pretense, just throw all my freaking games to easy. Why even put on the airs of trying to go for a harder difficulty when I keep getting my ass whooped?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole point is to have a good time, so
Yeah, and I wasn't for a while. A lot of games, I'm sure it's age related, but I just kept getting my ass whooped more and more by different games. So I'm not proud to admit that, but
well, at least you didn't start on easy. You had to work your way to easy.
Yeah, right.
Maybe you need to go PvP and just recruit somebody older than you to play against.
That would be hard to find, and then I get jittery with that too. Going online these days, you never know what you're going to get.
Wait a second, how old are you, Gus? Gus, you're talking like you're 70 years old here.
You want to take a guess? Take a guess. You get 3 guesses. 3 guesses.
48.
No, I'm not 48. 2 more guesses.
53.
No, not 53.
Well, hell, I don't know.
Are you bracketing?
You're not even going hot or cold.
No, you get it or you don't.
39.
No, I'm not there now. I turned 50 a few months ago.
Oh, so you're the same age as us.
Yeah, that's old.
Pretty much. I'm 52.
Old, right? I wasn't BB. Wasn't sure how old you were, Bryan. I knew you were a little older than I am.
I'm in the middle. I'm splitting the difference between you guys.
You are? Okay.
So
50's a terrible age because that's when everything starts to break.
Right. Well, that I learned through practicality. I learned that the last few years. Everything's starting to go to pot. But
yep.
Yeah, I'm splitting the difference, but I'm a little closer to Bryan. So
got it. Yeah, I thought so. I couldn't remember. And then I don't know if I ever knew how old Boyer was.
Yeah.
I knew he was just a little older than I was. Not by much.
So
they say 50 is the new 49.
Yeah. Well, plus Bryan got to actually shoot stuff for real in Gulf One, so that sort of clued you into about.
Yeah, I never got to do that, so I think I have all this frustration bottled up.
We've gathered this esteemed panel, or what passes for one around here, for tonight's podcast. We're going to be talking about the best of computer wargaming. We're going to focus on digital stuff. That said, we're going to split this into kind of a two-part episode. So we've got part one tonight, where we've got some particular topics we'll cover. In a couple of weeks, we're going to swing back around, and we're going to also come back to computer wargaming and kind of cover those topics we don't get to tonight. But for tonight, we're gonna focus more on kind of tactical level stuff, maybe bump up a little bit to some operational, maybe talk a little RTS in there also as a part of the tactical side of things. We're not worried about eras, so we're gonna cover all kinds of eras, whether it's sort of tactical swords and sandals stuff all the way up to tactical space laser stuff.
Got it.
We're gonna cover all the way across the spectrum there, but we're gonna start there and kind of work our way up a little bit and see how far we get in this episode, and we'll make up the rest of it for the next episode here in a little while. And so, Bryan, you were the guy that said, hey, we could always do something on Best of Computer Wargaming. So we're going to start down at the tactical level. What are some tactical level sorts of games? And look, if you've got to go into RTSs or first-person shooters to kind of describe some of this, talk to us some about some of the tactical games that you think are the best out there.
Well, let me start off with the granddaddy, it would seem, Combat Mission. Been around forever. It's been redone into a new, well, it's not necessarily new at this point. I'm not even sure when it was re-released and it's with its latest engine and so forth. I mean, you can go back to the when it first came out, a squad was 3 little characters, individual tanks. The graphics weren't great, but at the time when it came out, it was just amazing. It wasn't a whole lot like it. It has been redone. Who's the company that owns it now? Does Matrix own it?
So Slytherin and Matrix, who we jokingly refer to as S&M, right? Because Matrix is now a division of Slytherin. They have purchased the rights to Combat Mission from Battlefront in that they are doing the publishing work. I think Battlefront are still the development studio behind it. But quite frankly, the press release sort of still made you scratch your head a little bit on exactly how tightly those two were coupled.
Right. Yeah, so it used to be exclusively you had to buy it from Battlefront Studios as well.
Yes.
Which wasn't great. But I hate doing stuff like that because that's the type of situation where you lose your password or something like that. And not great. So everything's now on Steam completely now. So got that going for it. With the new generation of it, all the modules, there's even modern modules now, Combat Mission Cold War, Combat Mission Black Sea, which kind of saw the Ukrainian war happening. It kind of predicted it, about 5 years ago before it actually
was a little while
happened.
ago. There's a Syria module now. There's
that's Shock Force.
That's Shock Force. I couldn't remember the name of it, and I was stalling for time, figuring one of y'all would answer.
So nowadays you hold on. Let me think how I want to say this here. Like I said, back in the day, you just had like 3 little figures as a squad. 3 or 4 little figures. Now it shows complete squads. Graphics are a little dated at this point, but still pretty decent. Let's see what else about it. It does have some shortcomings as far as trying to figure out line of sight and stuff like that, especially at long range. Especially with the modern day campaigns like the Cold War and Shock Force. All of a sudden your tank, is blowing up and you just don't have a clue how it got blew up. And sometimes you're trying to figure out why you can't see certain things. That's probably its biggest weakness is line of sight. But still, as far as tactical games go, I think it's one of the all-time classics, and it's gotten better. It's probably ready for another reboot or something at this point, but still one of the best.
I would expect that there's some engine work coming on it fairly soon, although I can't definitively say for sure, yes, absolutely. But I would suspect there is some coming. I will say something interesting about the combat mission games that a lot of folks might not realize. On the professional and practitioner side, there's been this sort of wargaming insurgency that's grown up over the last 3.5 to 4 years around it started in the UK around this organization. They were jokingly calling themselves the Fight Club. Again, you're not supposed to talk about Fight Club, but they started Fight Club UK, and now there's about 12 or 14 different fight clubs in countries around the world, and then there's a Fight Club International that kind of helps coordinate some efforts with these guys. They've gotten a bunch of combat mission licenses that they've used for a whole bunch of their multiplayer events. And what they'll do, they'll give out the licenses to the people that are committing to come to those multiplayer events. But then if you don't show up, they've got the back end access to revoke your license. So you can't just say, oh yeah, I'd like a license for this thing, and then never show up for it and be playing combat mission for free. You don't get to do that. Like, they'll pull your license back if you don't show up for the stuff you're supposed to. But they've had these, 12 and 14 and 16 man battle royales that they've set up with the multiplayer server that they've got configured for Fight Club. And it's something that the pros have started to use, not because it's uber realistic, not because it's, trying to do some sort of future predictive stuff. The majority of what they do is actually the World War II scenarios, but because it gives people a chance to practice some actual tactical decision making in a scenario, in a real-time scenario where you're actually having to coordinate with other people and react to, a thinking opponent, whatever, that they've found that one to be a pretty useful one that they go back to quite frequently. After a while, people kind of get used to the interface, so that probably helps also. But it's something that on the pro side, they are using. And again, mostly the World War II modules, not because it's, oh, here's how to go fight and win tomorrow's wars, but because it gives them an opportunity for practicing tactical decision-making.
Yeah, it does a pretty good job of replicating like suppression fire, using tactics like that where you're suppressing the enemy and then bounding in an Overwatch and stuff like that. It's pretty, I can see how that could be useful in teaching that type of stuff.
Yeah. Gus, combat mission, man. When was the last time you pulled your hair out over combat mission digital rights management?
I remember years and years ago, Boyer mentioned Battlefront, and it was at least like 15 years ago where, there was no online or cloud services yet, and I think I lost the discs or something like that, and I tried to get a replacement set, and it just was not happening. So I did pull out whatever hair I had. It was
not cheap either.
And they're not, back then they were even more expensive, I think, than they are now. Like $70 or $80 for the first game.
Yeah.
And that was my first rough handling by Battlefront. I'll remember that for a while.
Somebody really hurt those guys in a previous life because they were so hyper suspicious of
everybody.
Yeah, it was crazy how twitchy those guys got over anybody's questions for, help with a license or a copy or unlocking a password or something.
It was exactly where I was coming from. It was like a set of discs lost in a move, legitimately. And they were not having it, and that was that. And that actually leads me to a game that I was going to bring up, and another notorious publisher who has a very, very similar rep to Battlefront, maybe even worse, probably worse at this point in 2024. This was a naval gaming publisher, a game that I loved, put out by Norm Koger, Distant Guns. You guys played Distant Guns?
I'm trying to remember.
I don't think set in the Russo-Japanese War, obviously.
I do remember the whole shit show over them being very protective.
Same thing, same story.
Yeah.
Even worse. Potentially, possibly, and people still to this day, you can find forums online where Norm Koger's name is taken in vain because he's not taking any crap. Just like Battlefront, he didn't care what happened to your discs. You're gonna pay, and you're gonna pay again. And the game itself was great if you can get to it. And the DRM, once you did legitimately pay, was archaic, not always reliable, and it was a great game hidden behind all these barricades that legit players would have to get to. Very similar to Battlefront.
Yeah, if I remember, I did not buy the game specifically just because of all the DRM and what they were doing.
A lot of people didn't. It was too much. It was just too much.
Yeah, at a certain point, I think this isn't intended to become like the DRM episode or anything, but I do think that there was a certain period in time, like we were sort of banging on Battlefront a little bit. They certainly were not the only ones that were guilty of this, but there was a certain point in time at which, like you said, not everybody was online where you had the ability to store software keys in the cloud and authenticate folks remotely or whatever. But the ability to copy discs was very easy, and folks were very protective of the software, that almost overprotective, that in protecting the software from unauthorized use by people making copies and sharing them with their friends, you almost made it hard for authorized use by the people who actually bought it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of those people.
Yeah, and I think fortunately those days are largely behind us anymore, that more of the headaches come from engine incompatibilities than they do from DRM issues at this point. But it was definitely an ass kicker there for about a 10 to 12 year period, right at the end of the 90s in through almost to 2010 or so.
Yep.
You know?
Well, I got to say, the best DRM I ever got for a war game was Steel Beast Pro, where they sent me a fob that I had to have plugged into my computer in order to play the game. So
the infamous dongles, huh?
Yes.
That's another level.
Yeah, those were much ridiculed, and deservedly so.
I almost want to say they still have it, though. I'm not 100% sure.
That for Steel Beasts?
Steel Beast Pro.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, isn't Steel Beast open source? But I get it. Steel Beast Pro, I get it.
The best protection that I remember was years ago. I was like 15, from LucasArts or Lucasfilm during their Battlehawks 1942 game and their Battle of Britain game. Those code wheels that they'd send out.
Yep.
I love those. They were awesome. It was part of like a really complete package with an awesome manual. Those games were incredible. But I look back at those code wheels fondly because couldn't really mess with them. They were pretty user friendly, and they were not archaic at all, but they were like an interesting way to protect the game itself.
What was the name of the company? Was it Lucas?
LucasArts, I think.
LucasArts, yeah.
Or Lucasfilm, but those games were absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I think they did that type of DRM with all of their games.
Yeah, and I thought that's a great way to do it.
Unless you lost the wheel.
Unless you lost the wheel. I never had that happen, thankfully. I didn't have to deal with trying to get a new wheel. God knows what I'd have to do in like 1989 to get a new wheel if I lost the wheel.
So we've got a couple of things with some shooty bangy stuff in it for tactical that we've talked about a little bit already. Do we want to go further back in time, or Brian, do you want to talk about Steel Beast? Where you guys want to go?
Well, let's just stay on tactical. I got a couple that are my all-time favorites.
Well, we were staying on tactical. The question was, were we going to like give up the guns for swords and lances and sandals? And
my the next one I was going to bring up is BattleTech, the 2018 version. By who the hell is it? Harebrained Scheme Games or something like that?
Scheme, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love that. It's my favorite, probably BattleTech game out there. You pretty much command a lance of 4 mechs. It stays pretty true to the board game itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's turn-based. Absolutely love it. They made a couple expansions for it. I would like to see them come up with, the second round of it. I think it was a great game. I think it sold well as well. So
yeah, I think it did well. It did well in reviews too. And I actually did play BattleTech. I think I put in not a lot of time, maybe like 25 or 30 hours into BattleTech. It was one of those games where I thought I was on a roll and I was able to support my unit. I think my unit was made up of 4 different pilots, and then you could go into the bay and You can calibrate and reconfigure mechs and upgrade and do all kinds of things. It was sort of like a garage. But then at like hour 30, all of a sudden difficulty got ramped up and I started getting my ass kicked again.
Well, the good thing is the modding community has taken over at this point, and they've really improved it, added a lot to it. You can play pretty much a campaign, never play the same campaign twice, with all the mods that are out there.
Totally dynamic now?
Yeah, you could. They have that out there. It's worth looking into.
So I should go back and mod it, is what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't know that there was such a big modding community for it.
Oh, yeah. I think it's all through Steam Workshop, too. So
yeah, I was playing totally vanilla, and then, like I said, I was on a roll. 25, 30 hours, and the difficulty all of a sudden just leveled me.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the problems with the base game was they kind of made some of the scenarios not necessarily fair, where if you did certain things would pop up based on you going to certain things, and it was like it wasn't the greatest experience. But nowadays, like I said, with the mods and everything, it's probably as good as it's going to get. And
I got to go back to it.
Yeah, I would recommend it.
Yeah, I got to mod it. I got to look around. I have to go into the rabbit hole, like the BattleTech rabbit hole, and find which mods are the best for that dynamic kind of campaign you were talking about.
Yeah, and like I said, it's all on Steam Workshop, which I just absolutely love because
me too.
That way, if you go to Gamers Nexus and you try modding some games, you might be spending 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out how to do it properly.
I know the struggle. I've been there. I used to be really good at doing that, and again, not so much anymore. And I got lazy with Steam Workshop. That you just subscribe and it's done.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's easy to get lazy with that.
So I was a big fan of the BattleTech tabletop game for years. I actually, once upon long ago, played it back when it was still called Battle Droids, which tells you how long ago this was.
I never even heard of that.
Yeah, that was the original name of BattleTech, and then they were told they couldn't use the droid name anymore.
Because of Star Wars?
Yeah, you can imagine who was knocking on the copyright door there.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But yeah, I had the original box that had Battle Droids on it that came with like 2 plastic mechs and a bunch of heavy cardboard maps and tiles. And I gave a lot of it to a friend of mine when I lived in South Carolina because he was a way bigger BattleTech fan than I was and a bit of a completionist. And I knew he would appreciate it way more than I ever would. So I just gave it all to Chris, let him have it all. As far as I know, he's still got the stuff. But I, in high school, especially over in Europe, but then a little bit back in the States, played a lot of BattleTech. Didn't play a bunch in college, but played a bunch when I was stationed out in California. And never really played the computer game much. Again, part of it is because I'm on a Mac and not a lot of this stuff gets released for the Macs. But always enjoyed not just the BattleTech games, because they were fun, but the world building and universe building that they did around the whole BattleTech universe was fantastic. And I mean, there's 40, 50 years of it, 44 years, I think, at this point of BattleTech universe building. That's just incredible. And, but between the novels and all the source books and everything else, it's really some of the best world building you'll get. And you could make a case that it's probably the best developed gaming franchise that's never had a significant TV or movie release to it, just because the world that you inhabit. And I think that probably you probably felt some of that play in the computer games also, because it's very easy to create that immersion for the world in which you're playing in those computer assets as well. So
yeah, there's so many books to get lost in. I occasionally try to find a starting point. It's impossible because there's dozens and dozens to choose from. One of
the easiest places to go back to is go back to the mid 80s and go back to the original William H. Keith books following the Great Death Legion, and just start with Decision at Thunder Rift and then work your way forward through the 4 or 5 books that cover Grayson Carlisle and his family. And that's probably the best place to start, and then roll forward from there. And most of them have been out of circulation, or not out of circulation. They've been around long enough that if you've got a decent half-price bookstore near you, the kind that sells the paperbacks for half off cover price, you can probably find most of them for like $3. Yeah.
By the way, I am a liar, because apparently it isn't on Steam Workshop, and you do have to go to Nexus to get the mods.
That would be why I didn't do it then.
But there is a thing called BattleTech Mod Manager, which still not as easy as Steam Workshop, makes it much easier
Yeah, I think I used it. I think I used it a couple of years ago. I downloaded it, I set up, it did work. But then I think by the time I got everything working, I had lost interest and moved on to something else.
The lucky 13th season of Mentioned in Dispatches is made possible by our fantastic regimental patrons, who joined our Patreon at the top level. The Armchair Dragoons would like to thank Michael Sundberg, Andy J., Fred Stogg, Joseph Knorr, Hellcat6, Chet Bell, Stagger Wing, Kevin Bertram, Patrick Garrity, Mike Quigley, and Fred too. Their support of the Regiment of Strategy Gaming helps us bring you the best strategy gaming article, events, and this podcast. You can join us as a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/armchairdragoons. Cheers!
Bryan, from the BattleTech computer game, what was the best selling point of that game that you appreciated?
Just that it was tactical, kind of like an XCOM style game, where you're giving orders and stuff of that nature. It's not, like the current game right now. What is it, MechWarrior, that's out there in the BattleTech universe?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's great and all if you like that, but this is just more of my cup of tea, being able to, develop strategies and so forth with this type of system, which is, like I said, is turn-based.
Yeah. Well, and turn-based slows it down enough for us old guys, right?
I've always been a turn-based guy. You have too. So even when we were young, we were probably more inclined for turn-based over RTS, so to speak.
One of the reasons for that, though, is that the computer power at the time wasn't enough to do a true real-time kind of game like we would have wanted were we that age, 30 years later. And so to turn-based was the option. That was all you had.
Oh, this is true.
So, Gus, anything else stick out about BattleTech before we move off of this one?
One thing that did, not necessarily BattleTech itself, but one idea that BattleTech made me think of, I don't know if you guys have played Aliens Dark Descent. It is sort of XCOM-ish, but set in the Aliens universe. And it's a really tough game. There's like a dozen missions. I played through one or two of them. It took me 10 hours to get through each individual mission I played through, but it is probably one of the best Alien games ever, even ranking up there with Alien Isolation, the first-person horror game they released about 10 years ago.
Yep.
Aliens Dark Descent is incredible, and it's like so true to the lore of the Aliens universe. If you are a Alien nerd like I am, it's XCOM set in the Aliens universe. It's absolutely incredible.
I got to get that. It's on sale, by the way, right now for 50% off.
You should grab it if you have even the smallest interest in anything Aliens. It'll make you giddy. You'll giggle through the entire game.
Now, the big criticism of it is, once again, comes down to scenario design, where it doesn't matter how well you were doing in the scenario. All of a sudden, it's going to throw some shit at you that you can't control. So, I definitely need to get that.
Especially if you like XCOM. I know everyone rants and raves about XCOM and has been forever. It's very similar. The soldiers that you're assigned are all customizable, and you get to go through rosters, and you can make a career out of the game. It's so detailed and so intricate, but yet so fun at the same time. It's one of those games where it might throw a lot of crap at you and make you feel like an idiot at the end of the day, even after you've laid your best plans, but you had a lot of fun while getting your ass kicked.
There was a couple of years ago, as with the Dragoons, one of the things that we've done over the years is we've republished some older reviews that some of us have written elsewhere as classic reviews, just to keep them alive in case some of those sites go dark. So like a lot of the old RPG reviews that I wrote back in the early 90s, or not early, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I've republished some of those. Our buddy Banzai Cat has passed a couple of his older ones over to me. One of them is the Alien vs. Predator 2 Primal Hunt game, which is, again, in that Aliens and Predator universe, but it's more of a first-person shooter than an XCOM style fire team tactical level game. We were getting, not long after this published, we were getting a ton of hits on our site for this review. And it's not because people were necessarily after the classic review. It's because that was the game that had the infamous shower scene in it in one of the cutscenes.
Really?
Yes. There's a screenshot in the article in the classic review. It's linked to the podcast episode. People can go take a look at it, where one of the female characters, it's the view of her back. But she's in the shower and she's talking through a glass door to some dude in full uniform standing there talking to her. And it's like, they're just having a conversation. Like they're just standing there having a conversation. But I guess this shower scene was famous, notorious enough that we were getting a ton of hits on this article just from people Googling like Aliens versus Predator 2 shower scene to try and find out about this thing. It was the dumbest reason we were getting hits on the site, but people showed up. Now the bounce rate was ridiculously high, but if you're going to the Aliens universe, typically it's not the shower scene that brings people to the table for things that take place in the alien universe. So
any publicity is good publicity,
I guess. I'm not really sure what was going on there, but okay, whatever. You guys have both mentioned XCOM stuff, comparing things to XCOM. What were your feelings on the original XCOM games and kind of how that's evolved? Have you kept up with them? I know both of y'all played some of the originals, but how much have you guys kept up with them since that time? And have you gone back to the XCOM series specifically, or have you avoided that for whatever reason and just played other games in that similar kind of setting? Not setting, but that similar echelon there. Gus, what about you?
I never played the original XCOM.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
I apologize. Sorry. I actually never played an XCOM game at all.
Yeah, that's a hanging offense there, son.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, I'm just messing with you, but that is a little shocking given how deep your other computer gaming gameplay has gone over the years.
Yeah, usually sci-fi is like the redheaded stepchild in what I play. Usually I have like the historical stuff first and fantasy stuff, and sci-fi comes in third. So in the limited amount of time that I play sci-fi, I just never got around to XCOM. I play a lot of their clones, like the Alien game or like Gears Tactics, another one. Games like that I love. So eventually one day, one great shining day, I will get to play XCOM, but just not today.
Today is not that day.
Today is not that day.
Yeah. Brian, what about you?
I've played them all. I haven't finished XCOM 2 yet, but I just love the system with it. You were talking about it being sci-fi. You almost forget that you're playing a science fiction game, to be honest with you. Yeah. You're not looking at I know they're aliens and so forth, but you're not even really, it's just your enemy. Let's just put it that way when you're playing it. But yeah, I love them. I thought the first one, way back in the day, what year was that? 95 or something like that?
I think so.
Around that time period.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was groundbreaking at the time. And then I remember they actually came out with the sequel to it was one that took place underwater, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I've played them forever. Absolutely love them. It's obviously had a big effect on game design since it came out. So yeah, there's no denying XCOM.
Yeah. And it's still the game franchise is still being kept alive today, although I think it's probably been superseded by some other stuff anymore. But it's still out there, Well,
XCOM 2 was the last one, and that came out in 2016.
Yeah, but there's still different mods and scenario packs and stuff that keep popping up here and there.
Sure. The big one is War of the Chosen. When did that come out? 2018. So they're pretty much... They got to be developing a newer version, I would think, but who knows? Because it's one of the most successful game franchises in PC history, I would think.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably. Well, and especially because, correct me if I'm wrong, the XCOM games weren't based on an external IP, were they?
No,
they're their own. Yeah.
Not that I know.
So there's no built-in audience for them the way you've got like Star Wars fans that want to play Star Wars games specifically, or something similar. The Lord of the Rings fans or whatever, Harry Potter fans. Like there's that built-in audience isn't buying that game because it's a Star Wars game or a Harry Potter game or whatever. They're buying it because the game, not the IP necessarily. Mm-hmm. Even BattleTech started as not computer stuff. So, so that could have something to do with it. I was just curious how much, if at all, XCOMing you guys had done over the years. So, Brian, where are we going next, man?
Staying with tactical, if we're looking for a tactical game that stays true to a actual tactical war game, I think David Heath's Lock and Load Tactical that on Steam, the computer version of that is an excellent representation of that. What we learned when we had him on the show was that he's never taking it out of early access, I believe, because I forget what his reasoning was on that. It's something about patching and so forth that makes it easier to do or something of that nature. But it's kind of like your old school. The game itself is kind of like your old school squad leader game, but much streamlined compared to the finickiness of squad leader. So, and plus he's got all the scenarios and everything that you could buy in print. You can buy pretty much for the PC as well. So he's doing an excellent job with that. It won't break the bank either, especially if you just buy the initial set itself might be free. I would have to look and see, but definitely worth your time if you're into the more traditional board game style tactical games.
Yeah,
and if you see the amount of expansions and so the core game itself is $5, $4.99. So you can't really beat that price. And I want to say he probably has around 20 different expansions for that core game. Everything from Grenada to Normandy.
Do those all exist digitally?
Yes.
Okay. And you're not talking like a tabletop simulator version of it or anything?
No. These are all dedicated to the core engine itself.
Yeah, so the Lock and Load Tactical game, the original board game of what's now called Lock and Load Tactical was originally just called Lock and Load, and that was Mark Walker was the original designer of that, and published the first two Vietnam games by it was actually Shrapnel, the computer game company, published those as their first two board games. Mark left Shrapnel back when David was still running Matrix. Mark published Band of Heroes through Matrix, which was the Normandy game. And then Mark split from David at Matrix and founded Lock and Load Publishing, named after the game. Years later, David ended up buying Lock and Load Publishing from Mark. I think there was an intermediary owner there for a year or something. I don't remember exactly how it all went down. But basically, David now runs Lock and Load Publishing, and they rebranded the Lock and Load game as Lock and Load Tactical to kind of separate it from the name of the company, so it wasn't the exact same name there.
Right.
And because Lock and Load as a publishing company had a lot of other games. Well, along the way, they also developed the tactical version. And so, it's a straight port of the board game. And the one big distinction between Lock and Load Tactical and any of the squad leaders in terms of scenarios and game settings and whatever else is, like you mentioned, Brian, the Lock and Load Tactical series covers way more eras of warfare. The squad leader is World War II, and there was a one brief foray into Korea. Whereas Lock and Load Tactical goes from World War II all the way up to modern day today.
Yep.
So there's modules on the board game side. There's modules on Grenada and the Falklands and Mogadishu. And I don't know if the Grenada one ever got published. I know Falklands and Mogadishu and Cold War Goes Hot in Europe. And they had some expansions that took place in Afghanistan and Libya. So there's a lot there on the board game side. Sounds like on the computer game side, there might actually be a few extras.
Right. And just of note, he also has his Nations at War series digital as well, which is a more less tactical, heading more towards operational scale.
Well, that's the one that's basically platoon scale, right? That's the Panzerblitz scale.
Yeah.
Because Nations at War. So originally there was the Lock and Load game was the original board game, and then Mark Walker released the World at War series, which was Cold War Goes Hot in Europe in the 80s in a platoon level game, and that's the one that's currently been rebranded as World at War 85. Just to make it clear that this is a Cold War Goes Hot kind of game. And then after that, they took that World at War system and brought it back to World War II, and that's Nations at War. That's where that one comes from.
So, and also the base game for that is $5 as well. If you just wanted to try it out to see if you like it, you're not going to be breaking the bank in order to give it a playthrough.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. So... Gus, have you ever poked around at any of those Nations at War, Lock and Load Tactical, any of those board games on the computer like that?
No, I haven't taken like a deep dive into any of them. I've fiddled with them. What they remind me of slightly, maybe it's a stretch, is Field of Glory games.
Okay.
And Field of Glory also, I think, based on originally board games. And they cover every conflict and theater you could think of, from ancient Persia, like 500 BC, all the way into the Renaissance.
Yeah.
The second iteration of the series, Field of Glory 2, is really, really good, really fleshed out, really slick, some great animations, hundreds and hundreds of units covered, dozens and dozens of battles covered, and all brought together in an overarching campaign game called Kingdoms. And that game is absolutely massive, and it will plug itself into the Field of Glory 2 tactical module. And if you have the overarching campaign of Field of Glory Kingdoms, if you want to play out a battle, it's an option. You could select it, and then the battle will be played out in the Field of Glory 2 system. I don't know if you guys have played any of that yet.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't, it's awesome.
Yeah, I've played Field of Glory 2 Medieval, and along with the strategic Field of Glory Kingdoms.
Yeah.
And you kind of, after a while, depending on, whether you got to win the battle or not, you kind of bypass, because the Field of Glory Kingdoms has its own battle system itself. Obviously much more simplistic. You can basically play out those battles very quickly, because if you actually had to play, out all the battles in Field of Glory 2 Medieval itself, it would probably take you a year plus in order to finish the game.
Take forever.
But I absolutely adore the Field of Glory games.
They've come a long way too. If you compare the Field of Glory 2 modules and you go back to the original Field of Glory, it's a night and day situation. They're just so slick now. And
the AI for them is it's not unbelievable, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely competent.
Yeah, exactly. And so, definitely a great pick there, Field of Glory. Any either the Roman one or the medieval one, they're all pretty good.
Yeah, the scope that it covers, I think it's a total of about 2,000 years, going from like 500 BC, probably all the way up to around 1500 AD.
I wonder if they have plans to go somewhere else next. I don't know.
I heard, I don't know how long ago, maybe over the summer, murmurings, and I can't verify it, but I heard murmurings that they're going to look at 17th, 18th, 19th century warfare, sort of like 30 years war up until Napoleonics, but that could also have been just like scuttlebutt.
That would be interesting.
Since I read that, I think it was around July or August. I haven't seen anything since then.
Well, they did have their Home of the Wargamers event. And so there might have been some of it discussed there. I didn't pay super close attention to that just because I had other things going on in my life and we didn't have anybody else handy to go cover it. But it for a long time, like Slytherin and Matrix would fly people to an in-person Home of the Wargamers event, and then COVID obviously killed that. But ever since COVID, even once travel loosened back up, they've continued to do this primarily as an online thing where it's sort of an all-day focus of here's a bunch of streams, let's have some discussions about them. And there were a bunch of different things for the Field of Glory series that they had spoken about at Home of the Wargamers, and folks can go grab those videos and take a look and see for themselves what's coming.
That's awesome.
So those are there. But yeah, that Field of Glory, like that's gotten a lot of love with the Dragoons. We've got some live streams that we've shared through Tuesday Newsday over the last year and a half or so, where Peter here in the States and Jan from Let's Play History, who's over in Germany, the two of them were teaming up for an extended campaign for some head-to-head gaming, but they were doing it as a live stream, so you get to see them talking to each other as the games are playing out. And then our boy Cyrano has had some Field of Glory games on Saturday Night Fights and some of his other live streams over the years. Usually when a planned tabletop simulator game kind of fell through for lack of participants or something, people got called out at the last minute, that they would plug in like a Field of Glory something just because it's easy to pull up and run with.
I wish he would do that more often because I find them very entertaining.
Don't tell me, tell him.
I think I have. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's not leaving Tabletop Simulator anytime soon.
Well, no, look, to his credit, like he's figured out how to do mass volumes of miniatures without having to paint them all. It's very easy to grab a computer and Control-C, Control-V and create an entire regiment of French grenadiers without touching a single paintbrush. Gus, is there a particular tactical or low operational something other than Field of Glory that you think belongs in a conversation around sort of best of computer wargaming, the best time you've had playing computer wargaming, something somewhere?
This one game is kind of like the fantasy that I had for like 40 years when I was a kid up until now. It's sort of the modern version of maybe the Total War system. I'm not sure if that's a good metaphor, but the Ultimate General and Ultimate Admiral games, especially Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. That game, it gets a lot of crap, but it is such a complex game, and the publisher and the developer Game Labs behind it, they are very, very dedicated. They update that game probably once or twice a week, and it's been out of early access now for 2 or 3 years. Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, it's got a campaign added to it. It's got the shipbuilder added to it. You can play as 7 or 8 different nations. It's absolutely incredible. It was a game that I had been dreaming about since I was like a little kid and like fell in love with battleships. If you've never seen it in action, it's amazing. And it gets raked across the coals sometimes because it's got so many complex systems going on underneath the hood. But just the simple fact that Game Labs was able to put this game together and has a coherent, cohesive system that's fun and it looks absolutely incredible. Maybe Total War was not a good metaphor. Maybe it's more of a Distant Guns inheritor. Like Distant Guns was a much smaller game than Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts is, but it's definitely influenced by games like Distant Guns from 20 years ago. It's absolutely incredible. And then the newest Ultimate General game is the American Revolution game, and that is still, I think, in early access, and they have 2 campaigns. There's an American campaign and a British campaign. I don't actually own that yet, but it looks amazing, and it's sort of like the Field of Glory system, a little more advanced, a little more slick, some more time and money spent on animations and things like that. But the campaigns in these games are a wargamer's dream, and I guess it goes back and forth between operational and tactical. The campaigns in the Ultimate games are really, really good, really well done, dynamic and exciting, and really, really rich with detail on whichever faction or side you're playing with. I played most of the games going back to like Ultimate General Gettysburg, and they're tons of fun to play, and they have probably hundreds of hours of replayability. So much detail packed into them. They really are amazing games.
Yeah, I started like you with the Gettysburg one, and then he made the Ultimate General Civil War game, which just fantastic fun. These games are very accessible too to play. Very easy to learn. Totally. One of the small nitpicks of the Civil War one was while I thought the tactical battles were very well done. He put that was his first game where he put a strategic layer to it, and I didn't think the strategic layer was all that great or that well done. But the fun that you would have actually fighting the battles in it was a good time in itself. Yeah. So I could overlook that. Having seen a video of the new American Revolution game, that looks phenomenal as well. Same type of tactical gameplay, but he looks like he's really fleshed out the campaign. So looking forward to that definitely.
Yeah, the American campaign I think is complete. I think it's the British one that is still being worked on like right now.
And the one you brought up, the Dreadnoughts one, I've always had my eye on that.
That game is insane in a good way.
I do hear so much bad press about it.
Yeah, it's got its people on one side, and it's got its people on the other.
Yeah, but it definitely intrigues me. There's another game along those lines without whose graphics are not as good. It's by I want to say it's by Slytherin, and it's looks more like you're playing a database, an Excel spreadsheet type thing.
You know about Rule the Waves?
There you go.
It,
Rule the Waves. And I've heard that's phenomenal as well.
People rave about Rule the Waves. Yeah, I've not played Rule the Waves.
Yeah, so we've got a review of Rule the Waves on the site, and I think the big distinction there is that Rule the Waves is less a combat tool than it is a fleet management game. Mm-hmm. You're going to fight some of the battles in the game, but really at that point, you're at the operational and even strategic level, because a big part of Rule the Waves is designing your new ship, the new ship designs and how to put them into production and how to pay for them in some cases. But what's the composition of your fleet based on the kinds of missions you expect them to have to execute, and how do you build and organize and train and equip and pay for all of this stuff? That was really kind of a big piece of what Rule the Waves was after. You had a lot of very intense personnel management in that you didn't otherwise have somewhere else. So that's the kind of stuff that Rule the Waves did that was very different compared to just a normal, roll your fleet out and go blow shit up kind of game.
Yeah, I think if I'm not wrong, I think you pretty much do the same thing in Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, where you build navies and so forth, build ships. Gus, you would know better than me.
Yeah, you're right. It's a fleet management game, but it's also a individual ship construction game too. You could spend all your time in the construction component of the game, and I spent hours just trying to learn it, and they flew by because it was amazing looking, it was fun, and it was really educational too. Like, the databases for these games must be absolutely massive. There's so much information on any aspect of a circa 1900 battleship or other types of ships too that you'd ever want to know. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I've not played any of the Ultimate anythings. Even Rule the Waves, like, I didn't necessarily play it, but I had to edit the review, so I know what Dave was talking about when he was putting the review together. So that's where I'm coming at that from, is looking at what we were told from Dave on these things. So
what you may or may not know is that the founder of Game Labs was a Total War modder.
Yeah.
Darth Vader. He put together probably like the best known Medieval 2 Total War mod of all time, stainless steel series of mods. That's where he got started, and then he went off on his own. I think they're from Eastern Europe, maybe Ukraine, and he established Game Labs roughly 10 years ago, and has not looked back since. So
I never realized he was a foreign.
He's living the dream.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, our work is done.
I think we're going to end up saving the discussion of Total War for another day, because quite frankly, that could be its own episode.
I will.
The entire Total War family. That Gus, we might just bring you back next season and do nothing but talk Total War for a whole.
I'm good with that. It was my former favorite series, which has since fallen from grace, but still has a place in my heart.
I didn't think it would take a lot of arm twisting to get you to show up for that one.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Leaving Total War aside, Bryan, hit us up with the last thing you want to hit on tonight for more tactical level, or bumping up slightly from tactical level, if you wanted to drift into some operational, or if you want to go the other way and talk either RTS or shooters.
Well, let's keep it on tactical. We could always get to the other stuff eventually. But this is kind of obscure, but I'm going to go with the Blood Bowl games. As you know, we've had our own Armchair Dragoons Blood Bowl tournaments.
Yes.
And it's great at putting together, leagues and player versus player, and had probably some of the most fun gaming I've had on the PC was it being in the Armchair Dragoons Blood Bowl tournament.
You should totally set up another one and get it running.
But here's what I have found out is, just from Ozorski, running yet, it's hard to get all these people together and at the same time, to schedule these things. But it can be done. Where there's a will, there's a way. But it's pretty much a direct port of the board game itself, Blood Bowl. And once you play the actual PC version, I never played the tabletop version, but as I've said before, that I can't imagine actually playing the board game version after playing that, because of all the dice rolls and all the rules that the computer pretty much just takes care of for you. Trying to remember all of that when you're playing the board game, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it is a pain in the nuts because I've played the board game version a bunch, and you're right. Yeah, it'll kick your butt if you're not right on top of it. Gus, have you played Blood Bowl before? Are you familiar with it?
I'm a very, very casual Warhammer and WH40K fan, but I've not played Blood Bowl. No. Gotcha. Not yet. If you guys got something together, I would get the game just to try that out with you guys.
Well, first off, don't just join. If we do get something together, play against the computer first because
you'll get my ass kicked there. Oh, you be ready to get my ass kicked elsewhere.
Yeah, you'll get the human will kick your ass 5 times worse, especially if they know what they're doing. And we had a couple people in the league. They knew, there's different races, dwarves, elves, and all that stuff. They knew exactly who to pick, and they knew exactly how to play their team. And if you're playing against somebody that knows exactly what they're doing, you're not going to win.
Yeah. Those games always look like total insanity to me.
Yeah, at least one of the guys in the league was a bit of a ringer because he plays and wins Blood Bowl tabletop tournaments on a regular basis. So there was at least one ringer in there that joined specifically because of the Blood Bowl tournaments that he was interested in playing. Because he doesn't get to play enough of them anymore. And being on the computer means, Brian, as you've noted, like we don't now have to get everybody in the same room at the same time to do this stuff. You can do it not asynchronously, right? Because the 2 people in the game have to be on there together, but you don't have to have all 8 people for the tournament all in there at the same time.
No, they can play whenever they want. There's basically a schedule and people just have to meet up at a agreed to time to play out their games, and then there's like a commissioner, I believe, who advances from week to week.
Yep. So Brian, as soon as you're ready to start up another one, man, let me know. We will make sure that it is advertised far and wide for people to join. I noticed.
I'm not saying I'm doing that.
I noticed it got real quiet right there. As soon as you had to do something,
well, it is definitely a time commitment. Jim did a great job of running ours. So whenever he can drag himself away from Tabletop Simulator, we should do that again.
The key thing here is to keep it to a manageable scope, right? 6 players that that needs what, like an 8-week season max. Maybe
I think we had a 10. I think we had a 10-team league, if I remember correctly. It might have been 8 or 9. I can't remember.
Yeah, but, it was an even number, whatever it was. But you keep it down to about 6. Everybody plays each other once. That's a 5-game season. So you can do that even if you do 10 weeks and give everybody 2 weeks to get their games in. That people probably lose interest, with only playing every 2 weeks. But you play once a week, but it's only a 5 or 6 week commitment max. You could probably get 6 players to do that one.
But half of the fun of Blood Bowl is advancing your players throughout the season. So you want your season to be long enough where you could take your crappy quarterback and by the end of the season have him being the star player. So that's half of the fun of the game. One of the moments that comes to mind is, and it's actually on YouTube, Jim had posted it there. I was playing Jim's son, and out of the crowd, somebody threw something that hit my star player and killed him. And I won the game, but I was so freaking shocked by this. I was like, well, what the hell? Somebody throws some garbage out of the crowd and kills my star player. Wasn't good.
It sounds like, again, if you need some time to develop your players over the season, you're now talking yourself into a 10-team league, and let me know when you're ready to fire it up, and I will make sure it gets advertised on the news and all of our social channels, and we'll get you a couple extra players.
You're the best.
I'm here to help, man. I'm here to help. You let me know when you're ready to do it, and we'll make it happen. So,
will you participate?
No,
of course not.
Dude, I don't have anything else going on with this play. Man, I got the AC/DC coming up. Remember that? That's coming up in January, and we've got to get the convention registration shell all set up so that people be ready to start submitting events at the beginning of November, and we can open registration not too long after that, and get folks playing over MLK weekend where we've got our digital convention coming up. So, yeah, it'd be nice to have some other people help with that one. If you want to run the Blood Bowl tournament at the AC/DC, I'm totally down for it. It's a holiday weekend. People can do this. I'm all for it. You let me know.
I will.
We'll make it happen. But I'm not joining the league because I'm already running editorial for the site, plus podcast editing, plus Tuesday News Day, and now I've got the ACDC to load up on. So
we've heard this before, Brant.
So Gus can have 2 teams. That way he can take a week in there and play with himself.
I'll do that anyway. I need to.
He's guaranteed a tie in there somewhere, and he's unable to beat himself. So, guys, it's been fun. Gus, great having you. Appreciate you being here to join us for tonight, and we'll definitely have you back. It may not be this season. It may have to wait till after the holidays, but we'll definitely bring you back because we're going to have you on to talk Total War at some point.
Cool, no problem. I'll wait.
Yeah, we'll find places where you can jump into some podcasts and join the crew on a more regular basis here. Awesome. Bryan, you get next week off, dude, because I think we're talking to some Marines and some other professional types next week, and that
doesn't sound like that should go in the same sentence.
Marines and professional,
yeah,
or Marines and talk.
There you go.
We'll have to do it on video so we can grunt and point. We're gonna have at least one Army dude on there, not me, to bring the level of intellectualism up slightly. But no, we're gonna be talking professional wargaming some on the practitioner side for next week, and then we'll come back in another week or so after that to talk Best of Computer Wargaming Part 2. As we start to get a little further into the end of this season. We also have an episode on Space 4X games that we're going to talk about later in the season.
Awesome.
And I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, we've got a bunch of the folks that are going to be going out to SD HistCon, the San Diego Historical Game Convention that happens over Veterans Day weekend. And so when all those folks get back from Veterans Day, from that weekend, but after Veterans Day when they all get back, we're going to bring a couple of them on to talk to us about SD Hist and their experiences at that. So those are some of the episodes that we have left for this season.
Very cool.
So Gus, appreciate it. Bryan, thank you very much. Audience, thank you guys, especially for continuing to listen to us. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time on another episode of Mention in Dispatches.